For the final time this athletic year, the voices of experience coming to you from remote locations far-flung across North Carolina. John Thomas, your host, with Franklin Davis and Dan Beiser joining us from Whiteville. Guys, it's been a while. Hope you're doing well and ready to tie a bow on this excursion through the voices of experience.
Good to be here again. Should
John,
be an interesting one today.
all I can say is it has been an experience.
It has been an experience. It has been. We have gotten more experience than we've had an experience. Dan alluded to this being an interesting podcast, and that's I'm assuming because of some news breaking this morning about Coach Luke Little from Whiteville taking a new head coaching job. Franklin, what's the update on that, and what's the latest news there?
John, I think it's actually something that has come about almost in a record amount of time, according to Coach Little in conversation with him this morning. As little as 2 weeks ago, he had just interviewed the first time for this position, and apparently the folks in Morganton like what they heard and have offered him the job, and he's accepted it and will be on his way to Morganton here next week, I believe.
I think it's a real good move for Luke. I know they're going to miss him here in Whiteville. A lot of good things have happened in his 6 years here. They've added a new field house. They've done a lot of good things, made a lot of improvements. The football program over the past the 6 years he's been here have made good strides. Gone deep in the playoffs, won or shared 4 conference championships. So it's been a nifty ride over here, and I'm sure it's still remains an attractive job for a lot of coaches in North Carolina. So I would not think it's going to take too long to get a good list of candidates here at Whiteville High School for the head football coaching job, and hopefully they'll be able to keep it on the same type course it's been.
John, just to add to that too, I mean, you're not only losing the head football coach, you're losing the cheerleading sponsor, Nikki, his wife, and 2 pretty good prospective young athletes, Ty and Colby, Luke and Nikki's sons, who are coming up, and I'm sure going to be very helpful to whatever athletic program that they end up playing for in high school, which will probably be up at Freedom. But the comments that I'm hearing from a lot of people are just losing a quality family here in Whiteville that were involved in lots of things. I know Luke was very involved in the Dixie Youth Program coaching, and quite a few things other than just football. So not only a loss to Whiteville High School, which don't replace him, but it's going to leave a big hole in the community with the family league.
Certainly going to leave a hole that's going to be tough to fill. Dan, you alluded to it a little bit with Whiteville still being an attractive coaching position. Obviously, it's very early, and we have no idea what list of candidates would be in place. But what sort of challenges, what sort of things will Whiteville be looking for, do you guys believe, to fill that head coaching spot?
I would just think to keep the program at the level it's been while trying to improve it every day. So you get more kids involved and get the kids out, and continue to bring pretty much the same type dedication. Whoever comes in will be still inheriting a good group of athletes. They've lost some good senior players, but I think this past year was very positive. They lost their opener and then won 11 straight, and tied for the conference championship. Went to the second round of the state playoffs, where they got beat by a pretty good football team way out there in the mountains. So it's I don't know. I just think there's a lot of more good opportunities in the Whiteville football program, and saying that pretty much for the rest of Columbus County, because I just feel like with a new man in at Whiteville and seeing maybe some new things brought into the program while trying to keep up its reputation, you'll find the other schools in Columbus County working even harder also with the coaches they have intact.
John, I think it'll be interesting to see what the Whiteville upper administration does as far as trying to find someone that blends from a scheme standpoint into what Whiteville's been doing, because offensively the Whiteville Wolfpack this past season was maybe as good as it's been since the 80s, possibly. And, utilizing the athletes, find someone that will, make sure that it doesn't have to be their system, that what they're going to do is going to fit the skill set of the players that they have. And also it'll be interesting to see if the search centers around people with previous varsity head coaching experience, or if they're looking for someone that has served a number of years as an assistant coach and ready to step into their first job. I would think Whiteville would be the type job, though, that would draw candidates that have previous varsity coaching experience.
Certainly something to keep an eye on moving forward. Obviously, we wish our very best to Coach Little and his family moving forward over at Freedom. But life goes on for high school football, and high school baseball and softball season kicking off as well. Last time we talked, we were still tying a bow on basketball season, but baseball season already getting underway. 4 games under the belt for most teams in the Three Rivers Conference. Whiteville appears to be one of the early teams that's a favorite in softball, certainly in baseball. Of course, Whiteville with the big loss of Mackenzie Gore, out to maybe prove that they can win without him. What's the kind of attitude around the Whiteville team, and how are they going to try to not replace but make do without Mackenzie? Certainly there's still plenty of talent on the roster.
I just think it's a situation where they won the state championship last year, they won 4 over the last 6 years, and I know Brett Harwood goes into every season with he has optimism, but there's a lot of guarded optimism there, because when you get to be a program that becomes that successful, and of course Whiteville over the years, I guess it goes back more than 30 years now, has been one of the top contenders in whatever classification it's played. And going back to 2A this year could bring on a little bit more difficulty, particularly when the postseason gets here, and assuming that they do make the postseason. But it's going to be more of a challenge this year. People are kidding Brett, hey, you only lost 1 player last year, and that player was the best player in the country. But you say you ought to be plenty good again this year. But sometimes it's not that simple when you lose Mackenzie Gore and are trying to get things sewn up in other areas, and trying to keep the system intact, and trying to keep the kids working hard, and because there's a lot of teams going to be out to get Whiteville this year. It's already starting now, so they know that. I think they know what they have to do to make it the kind of season they hope to have again.
John, and I think one of the things about Whiteville that people focus on Mackenzie Gore on the mound. Mackenzie Gore was a force offensively for the Wolfpack too. You add that to the fact that Cameron Carteret, who did an outstanding job in the state championship series as designated hitter, has chosen not to play his senior season. That's 2 big left-handed bats out of the lineup. Whiteville's always going to pitch well, play defense well. They're going to have to, find a way to generate some runs. They've got the bats to do it. Some of the bats are younger bats. You've got a Lincoln Ransom that's just a sophomore that's going to be counted on. Jake Harwood, of course, to be counted on to drive in runs. But everybody's going to have to do their part. Of course, you got Brooks Baldwin, and Brooks is the I hate to say jack of all trades, because Jack's not a high enough card for what Brooks' talent level is. Can do a little bit of everything offensively, defensively, on the mound. And when you've got a player like that who's not going to be a vocal leader but will lead by example, good things are going to happen for your program. But, early in the season, a long way to go. And as Dan said, Whiteville's got a target on their back. They're going to get everybody's best shot, including West Columbus, is, I think, sitting behind them in the conference standings. I don't have them arranged in conference order on what I gave you, but the Vikings off to a 3-1 start in conference play, and they've got some excellent pitching, and 3, 4, and 5 in their lineup seem to be producing really well. So they're going to be one of the teams. Thought Red Springs was going to jump up there and be a challenge, and they may still do so. But East Columbus, with a big victory over them last week, showed that Brad Smith's team is continuing to improve. And East Columbus's biggest problem is they simply can't seem to get on the field. They've only played twice. Their game today postponed again, and they've got 3 games in a row, and that's always going the latter part of this week. And that's always going to challenge your pitching staff, especially with the pitch count regulations.
Certainly a challenge there. Who's another team in the county? You mentioned a couple of different teams there. Dan, we'll start with you. Who do you think can provide the biggest challenge to Whiteville in the county or otherwise in the Three Rivers? It's obviously a big conference this year, a lot of conference games to be played. Who's got the best chance to challenge Whiteville for the conference crown?
Well, Franklin just mentioned West Columbus. South Columbus got a big win the other night, and anyway, it was a pretty good win for South Columbus, but say they worked hard, and they are a team who can, and they had a tough outing against West Columbus about a week or so ago. So they're under Scott Johnson, and Scott's coached a lot of baseball. He coached at Southeastern Community College for 8 years. He took them out to the Junior College World Series 1 year, and he's been back helping with and in fact, he coached the softball team last year to a real good season at South Columbus. So he's got another. He's just got he's taken over another program here, and I think with his expertise, and seems like South Columbus always seems to have a winning attitude in whatever sport they're playing, and hopefully he can get that to multiply some and be a contender in the conference. I think right now a lot of teams are still working on how far their pitching can take them, and a lot of new kids out there throwing, and when you got the pitch count, as we alluded to every time we meet, it can be a difficult task.
And John, just to go back to the West Columbus for a moment, they got established pitching, and they have more than one established pitcher. Cole Benton has really thrown the ball well from the left side this year. Jagger Haynes, another good young left-hander. Cody Benton, they're using him behind the plate some now out of necessity because of an injury to Tanner Henson, but he's effective on the mound. Jerry Locklear Jr. has stepped up and has a win for them recently. And Cisse, Cody Benton, and Jerry Locklear, 3, 4, 5 in that lineup, have been producing offensively for West Columbus. If they continue to get that, I believe that we'll see some interesting ball games between the Wolfpack and the Vikings this year. And again, don't sell East Columbus short, because they can sneak up on people. And their talent is there. It's just young talent. And they'll get better as the season goes along, if they ever get to play.
Lots of games coming up this week. I know some of them on broadcast. Franklin, what are some of those games that you guys will be broadcasting that people will be able to see or hear? And what's one of those that stands out in your mind as one to keep an eye on this week?
Well, we were originally scheduled to have it on 89.9 WZCO South Columbus to East Columbus tonight, but they're postponed until tomorrow night, so we'll have that ball game tomorrow night at 6. So in place of that, we're going to go over to West Columbus and see the Vikings take on St. Paul's, which should be an interesting ball game. And then we'll be down at East tomorrow night for that ball game with the makeup game with South Columbus. Friday night, you can see Fairmont at South Columbus and get the video of that as well as the audio, as the CCCA students will be doing their second baseball telecast and have the video and the audio will be online, and we'll have the game on 89.9 FM as the Columbus Career and College Academy branches out and is starting to do some baseball now. So all of the just about any time. Last Friday night, John, all 5 Three Rivers baseball conference games were decided by 1 run. So that's telling you the type of competition that there is in the conference this year.
certainly a high level. We saw that really in every sport, all of the major sports. We have seen high levels of competition, top to bottom, in such a big league. There's so much competition there. A quick looking around the other sports in the county. You've got boys tennis starting up as we kind of try to give a bit of a rundown here as we wrap up this podcast series. South Columbus, Franklin, you've got as the team to beat. But Dan Whiteville's got a chance to challenge South Columbus for that boys tennis crown.
Well, and for that matter, East Columbus and South Columbus and West Columbus are showing improved teams too. I don't know. I'd say you kind of give South Columbus the big nod here, but as you say, you got some kids developing and coming up, and you got some good coaches in charge of the programs now. So you could see some couple of things happen as far as somebody advancing maybe above another that we may not expect. But it's hopefully the weather will start staying nice so these teams can get out and get as much practice and experience as far as competition in the conference, because it could turn out to be a real good race. But I would say right now South Columbus is the team at the top.
And John, I'd like to give a shout out to Sally Medford, the Whiteville boys coach, along with her husband Jonathan, who not only seems to have revitalized Whiteville boys tennis, which didn't even field a team 2 or 3 seasons ago, but kind of working on revitalizing tennis in the city of Whiteville as well. A lot of interest in that, and the boys tennis team now, rather than just struggling to have 6 to play, is competitive, and I think I don't know if they'll beat South Columbus, but certainly they're going to make South Columbus take notice and not just run through the conference without giving anything a second thought.
Looking at girls soccer, Whiteville, of course, has been a stalwart at the top of the conference for the past number of seasons. West Columbus improving, though. East Bladen, new in the conference, a chance to maybe challenge Whiteville. We saw their boys team do extremely well in the fall in the league. Franklin, is there a challenger to Whiteville among those couple of teams I mentioned, or among other teams?
Well, John, I don't think that people will see this, but by the time, before it's over, but by the time this is posted, Whiteville and West Columbus will have played on Tuesday evening. So I think we'll get some idea of how the Vikings match up with the Wolfpack, as they've been closing the gap over the past couple of seasons. Whiteville coming off a strong non-conference schedule, not a lot of success in it, but it has in the past prepared them for conference play. So I really don't think that you can base anything on what they've done non-conference, but tonight against West Columbus will be the first test. And I think throwing East Bladen into the mix from coming out of a pretty strong soccer conference that they were in previously, as you said, the boys came in and dominated play. Be interesting to see how East Bladen comes in and does in girls action. And East Columbus and South Columbus, again, those programs are improving. East Columbus even to the point of fielding a JV girls soccer program this season. So, things are looking up for girls soccer in Columbus County, all over the county.
I look for Whiteville to repeat again as conference champions, but probably not as handily as they have several years past. They're a much younger team now, and they've gone against some big 3A programs and been able to hold their own as much as possible. And I just feel like that's going to have them more prepared for their conference schedule. Like I said, it's probably going to be a little bit more tough for them this year. But Ronnie Todd's been at it a long time, and both boys and girls, and so he knows how to get his teams ready and what the preparation is they need.
Ronnie Todd has indeed been at it a long time. He coached me in youth soccer a number of years ago. So he has been at it in the county for quite some time. That wraps up our look at spring sports as we kind of tie a bow on things, but I think we would be remiss to not make any mention of the NCAA tournament. 6 teams from the state of North Carolina in the tournament, 3 of those in the ACC. Of course, North Carolina, NC State, and Duke, along with Davidson, UNC Greensboro, and North Carolina Central making a run. We'll start with the 2 top seeds there, North Carolina and Duke. Duke's got to draw both their 2 seeds. Duke will have to go to Pittsburgh early on in that first and second round. North Carolina gets the advantage of being in Charlotte. Obviously, the 3 of us are a bit partial to the lighter shade of blue. But Franklin, what do you think of those 2 teams' chances to at the very least make it to the second weekend and maybe even make some type of Final Four run?
John, I think North Carolina can beat anyone after they get past Lipscomb, and I think anyone that's left can beat North Carolina. It just, believe it or not, for North Carolina, it depends on how the 3-pointer's falling now. Can't believe that I'm saying that about a North Carolina team. Duke is certainly multi-talented, but there's just something missing on that Blue Devil team this year that I think will take them to the championship. However, when I reveal my Final Four picks, that may vary a little bit. Just overall about the tournament, John, I find myself there are more teams that I'm pulling for not to win it than teams I am actually pulling for to go deep in the tournament. So, unfortunately, that's a bad way to look at it. That's why I don't fill out a bracket anymore, because I find my head telling me to pick one team when I know when I'm watching that ball game I'm going to be pulling against who I picked. So, anyway.
I just know that the Tar Heels have kids who know how to get there. And this year's been kind of roller coaster ride. There's been some, say you go back to the Wofford game, and then their 3 or 4 game losing streak they hit, and just the kind of, things kind of came on, almost unraveled there for a while, but they battled back. They've made a good run in this conference tournament. I say Lipscomb might be their biggest hurdle. You just don't know, but it's going to be I don't know, as far as the rest of the ACC is concerned, I'm certainly looking at Duke to probably go to the 3rd round, and after that, who knows? And of course, Virginia's a team that everybody's looking at, and so as far as actually picking a winner or who's going to the Final Four, I just kind of hold back on that right now. There's too many big teams that have too many possibilities of actually getting there. So, but it could be a great one. It's going to be back in my home state of Texas out there in San Antonio, and should be some crowds coming in. So hopefully it'll be a great tournament to watch from start to finish.
Perhaps wise of Dan Beiser to avoid making the Final Four selections. We have to talk about NC State as well. They're a team that got a 9 seed in that regional with Kansas. They play Seton Hall in the first round. If they get by Seton Hall, Kansas has been ballyhooed as a weaker version of a 1 seed, a team that maybe struggled to deserve to get there. NC State, as we know, tends to play up to competition. Is there a chance they make a kind of a deep run? Is there a chance they knock off a Kansas?
Sure. Why not?
I'll go back to my comment about North Carolina. NC State on any night can beat anyone, and they can be beaten by anyone. They're going to face a seed. I think they may have a harder chance of getting by Seton Hall than they will Kansas. Seton Hall's got 4 players with vast tournament experience on that ball club that I think will pay dividends in the first round. But it would not shock me at all to see State make the Sweet 16 if they can get past Seton Hall in the first round. My big first round upset, though, does concern a North Carolina team. The UNC Greensboro Spartans will take down the Zags of Gonzaga.
Wow, big love for the Spartans.
Okay.
Yep, Spartans. Go Spartans.
Sparties.
I'll give
Spartans, not Michigan State. No.
I'll give you my big sleeper pick. It does not involve a North Carolina team. It is a 3-14 upset. Montana taking down Michigan.
I hope so.
That's my big shot at an upset. Number one, it would help out my Tar Heels a little bit, so there's a little bit of personal bias in there. But Montana is much stronger than a 14 seed. They project as about an 11 or a 12 on a lot of rating systems and things like that. Michigan got really hot. a lot of times those teams who get really hot in their conference tournament, plus they've had a week, almost a week and a half off by the time they play, with that Big Ten tournament being played a week earlier. I think there's a chance they've cooled off by that point, and I think there's a good chance Montana could be a team that would pull an upset over a Michigan, because they're much stronger than your average 14 seed. With that said, Dan, I know you don't necessarily have Final Four championship picks. Franklin, it sounds like you do. Let's hear them.
All right, here's my Final Four. I've got out of the South, I've got Virginia coming out. Out of the East, I've got Texas Tech. I do not have, as Courtney Raymond down at East Columbus has been, I was told that she said Villanova winning that. I've got Texas Tech coming out of that. I've got Duke coming out of the Midwest. You know, if I'm right, then I'm right, and if I'm wrong, I'm happy. And I've got Texas A&M coming out of the West. I've got A&M beating Virginia and Texas Tech beating Duke, and Texas Tech winning it all. 2 Texas teams playing in San Antonio.
My gosh. I'm glad I didn't make my predictions. Okay.
So Texas Tech, an all-Texas final. Texas Tech and Texas A&M.
But you do remember back in 1980, Franklin, I think it was the last game of Mike O'Cord and that talented senior class he was with. They went and played in Denton, Texas, which is where I went to college. They played Texas A&M and got beat by Texas A&M in the first round in good old Denton. So when I saw Texas A&M's, you know, that they'd made the tournament and were having a pretty good season, it got to say, gosh, I hope the Tar Heels don't have to play them this year. So you never know, because their basketball seasons or good seasons have become, you know, far and wide as far as I'm concerned. But back in the 60s and 70s, they had a coach named Shelby Metcalf who did a pretty good job with them. But their program, as far as I'm concerned, hadn't had a whole lot to cheer about. But looks like this year they could. And so maybe Franklin's made a good pick. If you have but 2 Texas teams in the final, I don't know what that's going to do to college basketball, because Texas has always prided itself on being a football state. So we'll see.
I've stuck to a bit of a more traditional Final Four. These teams that I'm going to say, you've heard their names plenty of times in college basketball over the past few years. I do have Virginia coming out of their regional. A lot of talk about Arizona knocking off Virginia. Look, Arizona hasn't played a ranked opponent since December. I don't care how talented they are. It comes down to experience in those type of close games. They haven't played a ranked opponent since December, and they certainly haven't played a team as good defensively as Virginia is. So I don't see Cincinnati being the biggest threat to Virginia in that region, but the Bearcats basically play Virginia light. They're basically a slightly less effective version of Virginia. So I take the Cavs out of that regional. And I really believe that's probably my strongest feeling of any team coming out of a regional. I really think Virginia's going to get to the Final Four. Coming out of Xavier's bracket, I have North Carolina. I think it's going to be North Carolina and Gonzaga meeting in the Elite Eight. I think we have a rematch of last year's national championship game. I think the Tar Heels get the better of the Zags, but I think there's certainly a chance that Gonzaga ends up beating the Tar Heels there. And you've got a good Houston team sitting on the 6th line as well. They're not a team that gets talked about a lot, but they're really talented. They've got some great guard play, a guy named Rob Gray, who is really, really impressive for the Cougars. They can make a deep run as well. This is the most I've really ever struggled with filling out a bracket. I have Michigan State coming out of Kansas's regional at that 3 seed. I think everyone has Michigan State pick to win the thing in some way, shape, or form. Franklin, I don't know if you can see this, is shaking his head, saying that there's no chance Michigan State's going to pull that off. I have the Spartans beating Duke coming out of that regional. I think that's a region that really could get shaken up. A team like a New Mexico State on the 12 line, NC State or Seton Hall beating Kansas, Rhode Island or Oklahoma possibly beating Duke. I think there's a lot of potential for movement in that region. And then I have Villanova coming out of the top region there, coming out of their regional, just because I think they're the most consistent team in that regional. I would love to take West Virginia. I really would, because I like their style of play. I like the press. The problem is every time I watch the Mountaineers play, they pretty much go dead on offense for about 10 minutes out of the 40 per game. And you can't do that against a team like Villanova that has very good guard play and can handle the pressure of West Virginia. So I think that could be the biggest hurdle for the Wildcats, would be the Mountaineers there in the Sweet 16. So that leaves me with the Final Four with Virginia and UNC, Villanova, and Michigan State. I have the top 2 overall seeds meeting in the final. I think this year has been so unexpected that it's almost unexpected to expect the expected. So if you can follow all of that. So I think Virginia and Nova will be meeting in the final because that's what's supposed to happen. And this has been kind of the year of things that aren't supposed to happen. So why not give us something a little bit different in the final? I have Virginia winning it all, beating Villanova in the final, capturing their first national title, just because there has been no team anywhere close to as dominant as Virginia has been this year. I don't care if they haven't done it before. They're going to take care of business this year, and Virginia's going to win the national title.
And the NCAA is going to look after Virginia because they have a squeaky clean image, and the NCAA basketball committee would love to see that. In fact, I think that's one reason why you're going to see Arizona lose early. NC State may be affected by this as well. The teams whose names have been associated with the FBI investigation may not get all the calls in the tournament, so conspiracy theorist here.
Conspiracy theorist Franklin. That's one of my favorite versions of Franklin when he gets rolling on some type of conspiracy. But that's something to consider, though. Virginia, not the most talented team in the tournament. I think that's something people get confused a lot. Michigan State, Duke, Arizona, they're the most talented teams in the tournament. Are they the best teams? I don't think so. I think it really does come down to Virginia. All right, guys. This wraps up this edition of the Voices of Experience and this season, if you will, of the Voices of Experience. Our final show that we'll put together, it's just become a bit too much of a hassle at times, but I know we've enjoyed having fun doing this, and I have enjoyed getting to talk with you guys. As always, it's certainly a lot of fun, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well.
I'd like to wish you the best of luck. I know we can see behind you with the high toms and some of the new things that you're going to be taking on with baseball upcoming, and I know you're excited about that. And it's going to they got a good person working for them with you, John. I know you're going to do a great job for them.
Go Thomasville.
I appreciate that, guys. Yeah, I will be calling all the games for the High Toms, all the home games for the High Toms this year, among a host of other things. So when the season gets started in late May, those I expect to be available possibly on our team website, definitely on the Coastal Plain League website. And we've got Facebook pages, Twitter pages, all of those kind of things as well. And you'll see my face and hear my voice on some of those as the season goes along, and certainly excited about this opportunity, about everything here with the High Toms, and continuing to roll along here in High Point, Thomasville. So anything else to add before we wrap this up, guys?
There is one event taking place this weekend that has some Columbus County folks pretty excited, as the West Columbus and Whiteville cheerleading squads will be in a national cheerleading competition down at Myrtle Beach. And because of some ways the squads are organized, they're actually going to be in the same group competing against each other for a national championship. So that should be pretty interesting to see how our two Columbus County teams fare competing against each other.
Well, we certainly wish them the best of luck, and best wishes to all of you who have stuck with us and watched for the past few months. We'll sign off for the final time here on the Voices of Experience, and what an experience it has been. For Franklin Davis and Dan Beiser at the News Reporter, I'm John Thomas. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.